It's absolutely fantastic to be here. I think that this has been a great and informative morning, and no doubt the afternoon promises much more of the same. And personally speaking, as part of the Hogan Lovells team that's been supporting Innovate Finance over the past few years as part of our global partnership with them, it's been a real privilege to be able to witness firsthand their own growth story. I mean, they very much are a startup that's promoting other startups. And I know that Charlotte's going to do an absolutely fantastic job in building on the foundations that Lawrence, Al and others have basically laid before them. So yes, as Elizabeth said, I'm Richard Diffenthal. I'm a corporate partner at Hogan Lovells. I work predominantly with tech, media and fintech clients, and I co-lead with John Salmon, who sat at the back, our Tech Hub, which is a team of lawyers from across the London office who look at the legal and regulatory issues associated with emerging tech, whether that's artificial intelligence, the use of Internet of Things, and I'm sure we've got an acronym for driverless vehicles. I just can't remember what it is. As part of our job, we work with both big tech and with big banks when they're buying scale-ups or collaborating with SMEs. We also work with scale-ups who are looking to raise capital to grow or to expand through acquisitions. And one of the parts of my job that I really like the most is actually supporting founder teams when it comes to delivering a successful exit. And one of the things I think has been clear from my own experience, but also echoed from the various comments that we've heard during the course of today, is that there is no single journey for any particular company. Everyone's path is absolutely unique. But along that path, every single founder and team may share common traits, common characteristics. And it was really interesting to hear from Poppy, Rita, Ian and Jonathan, when they were describing their own unique journeys to become global players, that in each case they had a fantastic product or service. They built a business and they understood the market opportunity that that product or service related to, and they had a relentless focus on how they executed. It went without saying that there was a tremendous amount of hard work and effort that went on in the background, and we haven't really touched on that today, but these people are literally pouring blood, sweat and tears into these businesses in order to make them successful. And as a transactional lawyer, I know a lot about hard work and execution, but it was the remarks that my fellow speakers have made before me that in terms of how a conducive and supportive business and regulatory environment that can make or break a particular startup that I found really interesting. As we're all acutely aware, for better or worse, the UK finds itself in a somewhat unique position at the moment as a result of the referendum, and we're all journeying together into the unknown. None of us in this room can say with any confidence just how those Brexit negotiations will unfold. It seems as though each day more and more political drama is played out in our news feeds, with soundbites being exchanged for political point scoring, but there's no real tangible signs of any progress. And for all of us, whether you're a startup or a FTSE 100 company, times of uncertainty just adds additional complexity and challenge. But with such challenges come opportunities, and as Charlotte mentioned in her opening remarks, the UK fintech industry is growing at an incredible rate and is becoming an increasingly integral part to financial services and the wider UK economy. And as the entrepreneurs, investors, technologists and professionals who are going to be out in front in terms of championing change in the UK, it's up to us in order to identify where those opportunities lie and how we can best maximise them. At Hogan Lovells, we've been thinking about the impact of Brexit for a long time, well before the referendum, and all of that's available in our Brexit hub. And if you haven't come across that, I'd urge you to take a look at it. And in particular, if you're interested in financial services, please do check out the report that we co-authored for the International Regulatory Strategy Group that was sponsored by City of London and the City UK. I know that many of the businesses and investors in this room are playing an active part in terms of shaping the debate going forwards through the likes of Innovate Finance and Tech UK's FinTech Delivery Panel. But I would urge all of you to continue to participate and engage in that debate so that the community can speak together and play a vital part in shaping our future. That brings me on to my second observation regarding the themes around capital raising that we've just heard about. It was interesting to hear some of the thoughts around crowdfunding and whether that's purely a marketing tool, and ICOs in particular. The UK has for many years been at the forefront of equity crowdfunding with the likes of venture founders, Syndicate Room and Seeders, all having effectively created and led the way in this fast-growing marketplace. And increasingly, we are seeing funding rounds where part of the round is being reserved for a crowd-funded allocation. And as Monzo and others have demonstrated, it can be a fantastic tool to drive engagement with customers and users. But as I think the last panel showed, it's been ICO fever that's really taken hold in 2017. I think there are reports that range between 1.2 billion and 1.6 billion having been raised via ICO in 2017. And to myself and my colleagues in Asia, Europe and the US, we're increasingly seeing people in startups across a whole range of industries say, we want to do an ICO, and how do we do it in the most legally compliant way possible? And the honest answer to that is, I don't know, and nobody does, because this is a nascent market, and we're all trying to find our way through this at the same time. It's interesting that for a long time, and well before the SEC put out their report earlier in the year, none of my securities colleagues would have said that a token is never a security. If it looks like a security and it smells like a security, then obviously regulators are going to treat it as such. And so the pronouncements that have come down in the US and the UK and elsewhere come as no real surprise to us. But that's probably because we're just risk-averse lawyers rather than dreamers. And clearly there are some ICOs out there that are just pure scams. I was at an event that we hosted the other week where one of the panelists discussed an ICO white paper that he'd come across, which basically said this is a scam, and nevertheless people had still committed money to that particular project, which just goes to show if you're making 5,000% return on Bitcoin, you really can throw money at anything. But at the same time, there are some really interesting business models and new markets that are potentially being opened up as a result of distributed ledger technology. And I think that the recent Filecoin offering is an interesting case in point. Clearly, anyone who has the balls to take on Amazon Web Services is an interesting character. And with $250 million in their pocket, I wish the team the best of luck. But even so, I think that if Jeff Bezos says, I'm going to take over your space, then that's going to be a challenging market for you to operate in. But I do think that the ICO market has been showing clear signs of maturing and evolving over the course of 2017. We're starting to see token sales being limited to particular classes of investors, and increasingly smart capital is engaging in pre-token in token pre-sales. And personally, as a lawyer, no doubt, I would actually welcome the FCA looking to regulate ICO sales within the UK. I think that as part of we have effectively a launch point at the moment to reshape financial services in an increasingly digital economy. And I think that ICOs are part of that toolkit. They won't be for everyone. They're not the end of the venture capital industry. But for some entities and organisations, they might be right for them. I think a key theme that's been running throughout the whole of today is obviously one of talent and culture. And as a partner in a law firm, those comments resonate with me particularly strongly. As a law firm, we're only ever as strong as our people. The product that we sell is the intellect and effort of our lawyers and how we bring that to bear for our clients. Whilst increasingly we're making advice and resources available through channels such as HL Engage, which captures all of our MiFID II and PSD2 analysis, there's much, much more that we can be doing in terms of utilising technology. And a lot of legal process is actually, the same as it was during Victorian times. And I think legal services can certainly learn from the way fintech has disrupted financial services in order for large law firms like Hogan Lovells to remain relevant going forwards. But I think that all the panellists who've spoken today have emphasised just how important it is to nurture and protect talent, how culture, values fit together, and they're at the very heart of everything that business and operation stands for. And clearly we've seen some recent high-profile examples of just what can happen when culture goes wrong. There's a brilliant podcast between Cara Swisher and Scott Galloway from a couple of weeks ago discussing the four, and as part of that, that's Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple. And as part of that, they discussed the lack of corporate governance within Uber and how effectively that lack of control has created massive damage to the Uber brand. And whether or not the company will be able to come back from that will be a fascinating case study to look at going forwards. Personally, I think Ben Horowitz summed it up best in The Hard Things About Hard Things when he said there's no easy answer in building a business. It takes tremendous amounts of effort and grit to become a great leader and to build a great company, something that we haven't really dwelled on today. In today's somewhat crazy world, that statement is perhaps even more true than it's ever been. But I, for one, will be leaving today inspired by the stories that have been shared by every one of our speakers and panellists. I'm optimistic about the future of fintech in the UK because I'm confident that irrespective of how Brexit unfolds, that we have an engaged, passionate and fantastically driven and motivated community of entrepreneurs, a supportive ecosystem of investors and engaged and progressive regulators. And all of those people want to come together in a collaborative way to spearhead change in financial services, both here in the UK, but more importantly around the world. As Anthony said right at the very beginning of this morning, we have reached the end of the beginning. And you'll all be pleased to know that I'm almost at the end of these comments. But if Jeff Bezos was in the room, no doubt he would remind us that whilst it may be the end of the beginning, it's still day one. If we regard the end of the beginning as having made it, then we've reached day two. And day two in Jeff's world means stasis, and stasis means death and irrelevance. So for the UK fintech industry to remain relevant, we must remain absolutely focused on day one. Rather than think about it being lunchtime, I suggest we regard it, the end of the beginning, as being 9:10 on day one. So on that note, I'd hope you'd all join me in thanking all of our speakers and panellists this morning for sharing their experiences. I hope that in the months and years to come, myself and my colleagues at Hogan Lovells will have the privilege to collaborate with you all on your own paths to growth. Thank you.
Thank you.